Can you nurse me just for once tonight?" The cowboy pleaded, and the giant mail-order bride held him close and gave him the best thing he ever wished for. "Can you nurse me just for once tonight?" Marcus Sullivan's plea shattered the evening silence as the cowboy dropped to his knees in the dust, his hands trembling not from any visible wound but from a deeper injury no one could see, and Vera Thornwell froze, because 3 men in Boston had used her powerful body for their pleasure before vanishing by dawn, teaching the giant mail-order bride that she was good enough for secret encounters, but too shameful to keep. Now another man begged to be held close, but this cowboy had married her 3 weeks ago, had given her his name legally, then avoided her bed every single night like she carried plague, never touching her, never explaining why, until Vera was convinced he regretted choosing a woman too tall, too strong, too much. And now he knelt before her with tears streaming down his face, begging her to nurse something she couldn't see, something that had nothing to do with bullets or blood, but everything to do with the terrible secret that had kept them strangers in their own marriage. The Kansas sun hung low and orange, painting everything gold and red like the world was on fire. Vera could smell the dust kicked up by Marcus's knees hitting the ground, could hear the distant sound of ranch hands finishing their work in the barn, could feel her own heart hammering so hard it hurt. This man, her legal husband, knelt before her in full view of anyone who cared to look, his pride completely shattered. And she didn't understand what was happening. "Get up," Vera whispered, her voice shaking. "Marcus, get up. People can see you. I don't care." His voice was raw, broken. "Let them see. Let them all see that I'm not the man they think I am." Something cold slithered down Vera's spine. Not the man they think. What did that mean? She'd spent 3 weeks trying to understand why her husband wouldn't touch her, why he left rooms when she entered them, why he flinched away when their hands accidentally brushed over dinner. She'd convinced herself it was disgust, that he'd seen her tall, powerful frame and realized he'd made a terrible mistake, that he was trying to figure out how to send her back east without embarrassing himself. But the look on his face now wasn't disgust. It was terror. Pure, desperate terror. "I need to tell you something," Marcus said, his words tumbling over each other. "Something I should have told you before we married, but I was a coward. I thought, God help me, I thought maybe with you it would be different. I thought maybe if I waited, if I built trust first, if I—" He stopped, pressed his fist against his mouth like he was trying to hold back words that were clawing their way out. Vera's legs felt weak. "Tell me what?" Marcus looked up at her, and his green eyes were drowning in shame. "I'm broken, Vera. I can't—" He stopped again, his whole body shaking now. "The war broke something in me, something essential, something that makes me a man." The words hung between them, not quite making sense. Vera's mind scrambled to understand, to put together what he was trying to say. The war, broken, not a man. And then, slowly, horribly, understanding crept in. "I can't perform," Marcus said, and the words came out like he was tearing them from his chest with his bare hands. "I haven't been able to since Shiloh. 5 years, Vera. 5 years of trying and failing and humiliating myself with women who looked at me with pity or disgust or laughter. 5 years of being less than a man." Vera felt the ground tilt under her feet. This was why. This was why he'd kept his distance, why he'd avoided her, why he'd looked at her with such desperate longing, but never acted on it. Not because he didn't want her, because he was terrified of failing with her too. "I thought maybe with you," Marcus continued, his voice breaking completely now. "With someone as strong and magnificent as you, maybe I could find courage. Maybe your strength could fill in where mine failed. But I've been a coward for 3 weeks, Vera. I've let you think I don't want you, when the truth is I want you so badly it's killing me. I can't give you what a husband should give his wife. I can't be what you deserve." He was crying openly now, tears streaming down his dust-covered face, his shoulders shaking. "So I'm begging you, just for tonight, let me hold you. Let me be close to you without the pressure of performing. Let me show you, with my hands and my mouth and my heart, what my body refuses to do. Nurse me, Vera, nurse my broken masculinity." my shattered confidence. Let me try to love you even if I can't love you the way a real man should. Vera couldn't breathe. Her mind was reeling, trying to process everything, trying to understand. This man, this strong, capable rancher who ran 2,000 acres and commanded respect from every cowboy on the place, was telling her he felt like less than a man, was begging her permission to be intimate without being able to fully consummate their marriage. And suddenly, horribly, she understood something else. Those 3 men in Boston, Thomas and James and Robert, they'd taken what they wanted from her body and left. They'd used her and discarded her. But they'd been able to perform. They'd been physically capable. They just hadn't cared enough to stay, but Marcus couldn't perform, and he'd still married her. He'd given her his name, his home, his protection, knowing he might never be able to give her a wedding night. He'd bound himself to her legally, permanently, even though he was terrified she'd leave him when she discovered his secret. That wasn't using her. That was the opposite of using her. That was loving her enough to risk everything. "Get up," Vera said, and her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Marcus, get up right now." He looked up at her, confusion mixing with fear on his face. "Vera, Get up," she repeated, and this time she reached down and took his hands, his calloused, trembling hands, and pulled. He rose unsteadily, and she realized with a shock that even standing, he had to look up slightly to meet her eyes. She was taller. She'd always been taller. She'd been ashamed of it her whole life, but right now, in this moment, she understood it differently. She was strong enough to hold him, literally, physically strong enough. Maybe that's what he'd seen in her from the beginning. Maybe that's why he'd chosen her. "You think you're broken," Vera said quietly, looking into his red-rimmed eyes. "You think you're less than a man because your body won't cooperate. But let me tell you what I see, Marcus Sullivan." She kept her grip on his hands, anchoring him. "I see a man brave enough to fight in a war that traumatized him. I see a man honest enough to marry me and give me his name, even knowing I might leave him when I learned the truth. I see a man who's been protecting me from pressure for 3 weeks instead of taking what he wanted, like the so-called real men I knew in Boston." Marcus's breath caught. "But I don't care." The words came out fierce, and Vera was surprised by her own certainty. "I don't care, Marcus. Do you understand? Those men who used me in Boston, they could perform just fine. They had no problem taking what they wanted. But the moment they were satisfied, I meant nothing. I was nothing. You're standing here broken and vulnerable, and you're still thinking about my needs, my feelings, what I deserve. That's more manly than anything those whole men ever did." "Vera," his voice was choked, "you want me to nurse you?" Vera asked, and she lifted one hand to his face, cupping his jaw. "You want me to hold you close? Then yes, Marcus. Let's go inside. Let's go to bed. Not to perform or prove anything, just to be close. Just to figure out what love looks like when it's not about bodies working perfectly, but hearts learning to trust." Something broke open in Marcus's face, hope so desperate it was painful to witness. "You're not leaving?" "Where would I go?" Vera asked softly. "You're my husband. I made vows too. And maybe we're both broken in ways that fit together. Maybe your weakness and my strength aren't flaws. Maybe they're exactly what we both need." Marcus made a sound between a laugh and a sob, and then he was leaning into her, his forehead resting against hers, his hands coming up to grip her shoulders like she was the only solid thing in a world that wouldn't stop spinning. Vera wrapped her arms around him, carefully, gently, and felt how he was shaking. "Take me inside," Marcus whispered against her skin. "Please, Vera, take me inside and teach me how to be loved by someone like you." Vera took Marcus's hand, his calloused, trembling hand that had built this ranch and buried his parents and fought in a war that had stolen something essential from him, and led him toward the house like she was leading a wounded animal to safety. The ranch hands had disappeared into the bunkhouse, whether from tact or embarrassment she didn't know and didn't care. All that mattered was the man beside her, whose breathing was still unsteady, whose fingers gripped hers like she might vanish if he let go. The front door creaked as she pushed it open. The house smelled like the bread she'd baked that morning, like coffee and leather and the lavender soap she'd brought from Boston. Normal smells, domestic smells, but nothing about this moment felt normal. They were married strangers about to become something else entirely, and Vera's heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. Vera. Marcus stopped at the bottom of the stairs, his voice hoarse. If you've changed your mind, if you need time to think about what I told you, I'll understand. I can sleep in the barn tonight. I don't want you to feel pressured to stop. Vera turned to face him, and in the dim light filtering through the windows, she could see the fear still etched in every line of his face. You've spent 3 weeks protecting me from pressure I didn't even know existed. Tonight I'm protecting you. Tonight, you don't have to be strong or capable or anything except honest. Can you do that? Marcus swallowed hard. I don't know how to be weak in front of someone. Then it's time you learned. Vera tugged gently on his hand, leading him up the stairs. Each step felt monumental, like they were climbing towards something that would either save them or destroy them. And there was no way to know which until they got there. His bedroom door stood open. She'd never been inside it, had only glimpsed it from the hallway during those awful 3 weeks when she'd listened to him pacing at night and wondered what she'd done wrong. Now she crossed the threshold, and it felt like entering sacred space, like she was being allowed somewhere precious and private. The room was sparse. A large bed with a simple quilt, a washstand, a wardrobe, a single photograph on the dresser, a younger Marcus with an older couple who must have been his parents, all three of them squinting into sunshine, the woman's hand on Marcus's shoulder like she was claiming him as hers. They were dead now. He'd told her that the first day. Cholera had taken them both within a week of each other, leaving Marcus alone with this ranch and the weight of their dreams. Sit, Vera said softly. Gesturing to the bed, Marcus hesitated, then obeyed, sinking onto the edge of the mattress like a man expecting judgment. Vera could see how his hands were shaking worse now, how his breathing had gone shallow and quick. He was terrified. This strong man who'd faced down war and loss and built a life from nothing was absolutely terrified of being vulnerable with her. She knelt in front of him. This time she was the one on her knees and started unlacing his boots. Marcus jerked in surprise. What are you? Taking care of you, Vera said simply. That's what you asked for, isn't it? To be nursed. She pulled off one boot, then the other, setting them aside carefully. Marcus's socks had holes in them. Something about that detail made her chest ache. This proud man wearing holy socks because he'd spent all his money and energy on the ranch, on his men, on everything except himself. I can undress myself, Marcus said. But his voice lacked conviction. I know you can, but I want to help. Vera stood and reached for the buttons of his shirt. Her fingers brushed his chest and she felt him flinch, not from disgust, but from something else. Fear maybe, or hope, or both tangled together until they were impossible to separate. She unbuttoned slowly, giving him time to stop her if he needed to, but he didn't. He just watched her face with those green eyes that were still wet from crying, still full of desperate uncertainty. When she pushed the shirt off his shoulders, she saw the body underneath, lean and strong, scarred in places from work and war, the body of a man who'd lived hard and survived. You're beautiful, Vera whispered, and meant it. Marcus made a sound like she'd struck him. Don't say things you don't mean. I never say things I don't mean. Vera traced one of the scars on his shoulder, a puckered line that looked like it had come from a blade. What happened here? Shiloh. His voice was flat. Bayonet. I was lucky it missed anything vital. He paused. That's where it happened. Where I broke. I watched my best friend die in front of me. Watched him bleed out in the mud while I held him and couldn't do anything. After that, every time I tried to be with a woman, all I could see was blood and death and... He stopped, his jaw clenching. My body decided it was safer not to feel anything, safer not to want anything, safer to just be numb. Vera's eyes burned. She understood more than he knew about bodies that shut down to protect themselves, about learning to feel nothing because feeling hurt too much. She'd done the same thing after the third man left her, convinced herself she didn't care, didn't need, didn't want. Until Marcus's letter had arrived, offering respect and a hard life, and something in her had whispered maybe. "Look at me," Vera said, and waited until Marcus's eyes met hers. "We're going to take this slow. We're not going to do anything you're not ready for. And if your body doesn't cooperate, that's fine. That's not the point of tonight." "Then what is the point?" Marcus asked, and he sounded lost, like a child asking for directions home. "Connection," Vera said simply. "Just connection. Just two people learning what it feels like to be close, without fear." She stood and began unbuttoning her own dress, watching his face carefully. His eyes widened. "Vera, you don't have to." "I want to." The dress fell away, leaving her in her chemise and petticoats. She'd never undressed in front of a man who wasn't about to use her. Never let herself be seen without the immediate pressure of performance following. But Marcus just looked at her, really looked, and what she saw in his face wasn't hunger or demand. It was reverence, pure aching reverence. "God," he breathed, "You're Vera. You're magnificent." She'd been called many things, big, unfeminine, too much, but never magnificent, never with that tone of wonder in a man's voice. She removed the rest of her clothes slowly, standing before him in nothing but her skin, and watched his face. He was looking at her like she was art, like she was something precious and rare, and it made her want to cry. "Can I touch you?" Marcus asked, his voice shaking. Just to feel that you're real." "Yes." Vera stepped closer into the space between his knees. Marcus reached up with trembling hands and rested them on her waist. Just rested them there, his palms warm against her skin. His touch so gentle it was almost unbearable. "I've wanted to touch you for 3 weeks," he whispered. "Every meal we shared, every time you walked past me, every night listening to you move around across the hall. I wanted you so badly I could barely breathe. But I was so afraid." "I know," Vera said softly. "I thought you were disgusted by me. I thought I was too much for you." Marcus made a broken sound and pressed his forehead against her stomach, his hands sliding around to her back, holding her. Never disgusted. Terrified, yes. Terrified I'd disappoint you. Terrified you'd realize you'd married half a man. But never disgusted." Vera ran her fingers through his hair, feeling him shake against her. This was intimacy, she realized. Not the performance she'd been trained to expect, but this vulnerable honesty, this desperate need to be accepted, this courage to be seen completely and trust that you wouldn't be rejected. "Lie down," she said gently. "Let me hold you like you asked." Marcus pulled back enough to look up at her, his eyes searching her face. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He lay back on the bed, and Vera could see how exposed he felt, how vulnerable. She lay down beside him and gathered him into her arms. This grown man, this war veteran, this rancher who commanded respect from everyone, and held him against her chest like he was something precious that needed protecting. Marcus made a sound between a gasp and a sob, and buried his face in her shoulder, his arms coming around her waist, holding on like she was the only thing keeping him from drowning. "I've got you," Vera whispered. "I've got you, Marcus." And for the first time in 3 weeks, maybe for the first time in 5 years, Marcus Sullivan let himself be held. They lay there in the gathering darkness as the last light faded from the windows, their bodies pressed together, skin to skin, and Vera felt Marcus trembling against her like a man trying not to fall apart. His face stayed buried in her shoulder, his breath coming in shaky gasps that told her he was still crying. Quietly now. The kind of tears a man cries when he's finally safe enough to break. "I'm sorry," Marcus mumbled against her skin. "God, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be strong for you. I'm supposed to be—" "Stop," Vera said firmly, tightening her arms around him. "You don't have to be anything except honest. That's all I want from you tonight." She ran her hand down his back slowly, feeling the tension in his muscles, the way he was still holding himself rigid despite being in her arms. "Can you do something for me?" "Anything. Breathe. Just breathe. Stop trying to control everything and just let yourself feel." Marcus made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been another sob. If I let myself feel everything I'm feeling right now, I'll shatter into 1,000 pieces. Then shatter, Vera whispered. I'll put you back together. Something in him broke then, some final wall he'd been holding up, and Marcus's whole body shook as he let go of whatever control he'd been clinging to. His arms tightened around her waist, and he cried harder, his tears hot against her skin, his breath ragged and raw. Vera held him through it, stroking his hair, his back, whispering wordless comfort like you'd give a frightened animal. She didn't know how long they stayed like that. Time felt suspended, like the whole world had narrowed to this room, this bed, this moment of complete vulnerability. Outside, she could hear the evening sounds of the ranch, cattle lowing in the distance, a coyote's lonely call, the wind moving through the cottonwoods by the creek. Normal sounds of life continuing while inside, everything was changing. Gradually, Marcus's crying eased. His breathing slowed. His body relaxed incrementally against hers, like he was learning how to trust that she wouldn't let go, wouldn't judge him, wouldn't leave. When he finally lifted his head to look at her, his face was blotchy and wet, his eyes red-rimmed, and Vera thought she'd never seen him look more beautiful. "Thank you," Marcus said hoarsely. "I've been holding that in for so long, I forgot what it felt like to just let someone see me like this." Like what? Weak, broken, human. Vera cupped his face in her hand, her thumb brushing away tears. "You're not weak, Marcus. You're brave. Do you know how much courage it takes to let someone see you like this? To ask for help? To admit you can't do everything alone?" She paused, holding his gaze. "The men who used me in Boston, they never cried. They never showed me anything real. They performed what they thought masculinity was supposed to look like, and then they disappeared. But you're showing me something infinitely more valuable than performance. You're showing me truth." Marcus's eyes filled with fresh tears, but he didn't look away. "I want to touch you," he whispered. Not to try anything. Just to learn you, to know what you feel like. Is that all right?" Vera's breath caught. "Yes." Marcus's hand moved from her waist slowly, tentatively, like he was afraid she'd change her mind. His palm traced up her side, feeling the curve of her ribs, the breadth of her shoulders. His fingers were rough from work, but infinitely gentle, exploring rather than claiming. When his hand found her breast, he paused, his eyes asking permission. Vera nodded, and he cupped her carefully, his thumb brushing across her nipple. Vera gasped at the sensation, not just the physical pleasure, but the tenderness of it. The way Marcus was touching her like she was precious, like he was grateful for permission, like her body was a gift he didn't deserve, rather than a thing he had rights to. "You're perfect," Marcus breathed, his voice full of wonder. "Vera, you're absolutely perfect." "I'm too big," Vera said before she could stop herself, the old shame rising up despite everything. "I'm too tall, too strong, too magnificent," Marcus interrupted. "Too powerful, too beautiful for someone like me to ever deserve." His hand moved to her other breast, then down across her stomach, tracing the muscles there. "You're built like a goddess, Vera, like some ancient warrior queen. And I'm broken and inadequate, and I can't believe you're letting me touch you like this." Something hot and painful lodged in Vera's throat. She caught his hand and brought it to her lips, kissing his scarred knuckles. "You're not inadequate. You're not broken. You're just healing. And healing takes time." Marcus made a choked sound, and then he was kissing her, not demanding or aggressive, but desperate and grateful and questioning all at once. His lips moved against hers, like he was memorizing her, learning her, trying to communicate everything he couldn't say with words. Vera kissed him back, tasting salt from his tears, feeling his whole body trembling with need and fear and hope. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Marcus rested his forehead against hers, his hand still splayed across her stomach. "I want you so badly," he whispered. "I want to make love to you like a real husband should. I want to be inside you and show you how much I need you, and I don't know if I can. My body might not, it might fail again, and..." "Shh," Vera kissed him again softly. "There are other ways to make love, Marcus. Your body doesn't have to cooperate for us to find pleasure in each other." Marcus pulled back enough to look at her, confusion and hope warring in his eyes. "What do you mean?" Vera felt heat flood her face, but she forced herself to be brave. If Marcus could be vulnerable, so could she. "Let me show you." She shifted position, gently pushing Marcus onto his back, and he went willingly, watching her with those green eyes that were full of questions. She kissed his mouth, his jaw, his throat, feeling how his pulse jumped under her lips. She moved lower, kissing across his chest, learning the landscape of scars and muscle and bone. Marcus's breathing had gone ragged again, but this time from arousal rather than tears. His hands found her hair tangling in the long strands. "Vera," he gasped. "What are you—" "Oh, God," she kissed lower, past his ribs across his stomach. When she reached the waistband of his pants, she looked up at him, asking permission without words. Marcus's face was flushed, his eyes dark with want and disbelief. "You don't have to," he started. "I want to," Vera said simply. She unbuttoned his pants slowly, giving him time to stop her. But he didn't. When she freed him, she could see the evidence of his arousal. He wanted her. His body did respond to her, even if he was terrified it wouldn't last. And terrified he'd fail at the crucial moment. "Just feel," Vera whispered. "Don't think. Don't worry. Just let yourself feel." Then she took him in her mouth, and Marcus made a sound like she'd killed him. His hands tightened in her hair, not forcing, just holding on like he was drowning and she was solid ground. Vera worked slowly, paying attention to what made him gasp, what made his hips jerk, learning what pleased him. She'd done this before. Those men in Boston had been happy to receive this kind of pleasure, but it had always felt like a performance, like something she did to keep them interested. This felt different. This felt like worship, like she was giving Marcus something precious, showing him that pleasure didn't have to come with the pressure of performance, that his body could feel good, even if it couldn't do everything he wanted it to. "Vera," Marcus panted, his voice broken. I'm going to— God, I can't let go," Vera murmured against him. "It's all right. Let go." Marcus shattered with a cry that sounded like prayer and pain mixed together, his whole body arching off the bed, his hands almost painful in her hair. Vera held him through it, gentle and steady, until he collapsed back against the mattress, shaking and gasping like he'd run miles. She wiped her mouth and moved back up to lie beside him, gathering him into her arms again. Marcus turned his face into her neck, and she felt new tears against her skin. "Thank you," he whispered brokenly. "Thank you. Thank you, thank you." "You don't have to thank me," Vera said softly, stroking his hair. "We're married, Marcus. This is what marriage is supposed to be. But I couldn't give you—" He stopped, his voice full of shame. "You gave me pleasure, but I couldn't return it. I couldn't be inside you like a real man should be." Vera pulled back enough to look at him. "Do you think that's what I need? Do you think that's the only way I can feel satisfied?" She traced his jaw with her finger. "Marcus, those men in Boston, they were inside me plenty. They performed exactly the way men are supposed to perform. And every single time, I felt used and empty afterward. What we just did," her voice caught, "what we just did made me feel powerful and needed and connected. That's worth more than any performance." Marcus stared at her like she'd spoken in a language he was only beginning to understand, his eyes searching her face for lies and finding only truth. His hand came up to cup her cheek, trembling still, and Vera saw something shift in his expression, from shame to determination, from fear to courage. "Then let me give you the same gift," Marcus whispered. "Let me show you that you're not just useful, not just convenient, not just good enough for men to use and abandon. Let me show you that you're treasured." Before Vera could respond, Marcus was shifting, moving, guiding her gently onto her back with a reverence that made her breath catch. He hovered over her, his green eyes locked on hers, and she saw how his hands were still shaking, but his jaw was set with purpose. "I might not be able to give you everything," Marcus said quietly. "My body might still fail me in that way. But I have hands, Vera, I have a mouth. I have everything I need to show you how desperately I've wanted you for 3 weeks, how much I've been dying to touch you, to taste you, to learn every inch of you. Vera's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. No man had ever talked to her like this, like pleasuring her was something he wanted, something he needed rather than a chore or an obligation. "Marcus, let me," he breathed. And then he was kissing her again, but different this time, more confident, more certain, like he'd found solid ground after weeks of drowning. His mouth moved from her lips to her jaw to her throat, and Vera felt herself arching into him, her body responding to his touch in ways that terrified and thrilled her. Marcus kissed lower, his lips finding her breast, his tongue circling her nipple, until Vera gasped and her hands flew to his hair. He took his time there, lavishing attention on first one breast, then the other, like he had all the time in the world, like there was nowhere else he'd rather be. Vera had never felt anything like it, this patient, devoted attention that asked nothing in return, that seemed to exist purely to give her pleasure. "You taste like home," Marcus murmured against her skin. "Like everything I didn't know I was looking for." He moved lower, kissing across her stomach, and Vera felt panic start to rise. This was too much, too intimate, too vulnerable. The men in Boston had never. They'd taken their pleasure and left, never once concerned about hers, never once offering this kind of tenderness. She didn't know how to receive it, didn't know if she deserved it. "Marcus, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to," Marcus said, looking up at her from where he'd positioned himself between her thighs. His eyes were dark and intense, and full of something that looked like hunger and worship mixed together. "I want to, Vera. God, I want to. I want to taste you. I want to make you feel a fraction of what you just made me feel. Please, please let me give this to you." Vera couldn't speak past the lump in her throat, so she just nodded. Marcus smiled, a real smile, the first she'd seen from him since their wedding day, and then he lowered his mouth to her most intimate place, and Vera's entire world exploded into sensation. She'd never felt anything like this, had never imagined anything could feel like this. Marcus's mouth was patient and exploring, learning what made her gasp, what made her hips jerk, what made her hands tighten in his hair. He took his time, completely focused on her pleasure, and Vera felt something inside her start to crack open, not breaking, but opening, like a door that had been locked for years finally swinging wide. "Marcus," she gasped. And she was crying now, tears streaming down her face because this was too much. Too good, too overwhelming. "I can't. I've never let go," Marcus whispered against her, echoing her earlier words back to her. "It's all right, Vera. I've got you." "Let go," and Vera did. She shattered into 1,000 pieces, her back arching off the bed, Marcus's name tearing from her throat like a prayer. The pleasure was almost painful in its intensity, rolling through her in waves that seemed endless. And through it all, Marcus held her steady, gentle, his mouth and hands keeping her grounded while she flew apart. When she finally came back to herself, she was sobbing, great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. Marcus crawled back up beside her and gathered her into his arms, holding her tight while she cried in a way she hadn't cried since leaving Boston, since being used and discarded by the third man, since learning that her body was only good for taking from and never for treasuring. "I've got you," Marcus murmured, rocking her gently. "You're safe, Vera. You're safe with me. I've got you." "Why?" Vera managed to choke out between sobs. "Why would you do that? Why would you care about my pleasure when you don't have to? When I'm nothing special. When I'm too much for any man to really want." Marcus pulled back sharply, his hands coming up to frame her face, forcing her to look at him. His eyes were blazing with intensity, with certainty, with something that looked almost like anger, except it was directed at whoever had made her believe such lies about herself. "Listen to me," Marcus said fiercely. "You are everything special. You are everything I've been looking for my entire life, without knowing it. You're strong enough to hold me when I break. You're tender enough to accept my weakness without judgment. You're brave enough to give yourself to a broken man who can't even promise he'll ever be whole. And you're magnificent, so magnificent it terrifies me that you chose to stay, that you didn't leave when you learned the truth about what I can't give you, But you did give me something, Vera whispered. You gave me more than any whole man ever did. Marcus's expression softened, his thumb brushing away her tears. Then we're even. Because you gave me hope for the first time in 5 years. You gave me permission to be vulnerable. You gave me proof that maybe I'm not as broken as I thought. Or maybe being broken doesn't mean I'm worthless. They lay there in the darkness, wrapped around each other, and Vera felt something settle in her chest. Not fixed, neither of them was fixed, not really, but accepted, seen, treasured despite all the ways they'd been taught they weren't enough. What happens now? Vera asked quietly. Tomorrow, when the sun comes up and we have to face the world again? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his hand stroking her hair. Tomorrow we wake up married, he said finally. Tomorrow we figure out how to build a real life together. Tomorrow we keep learning what it means to love each other. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but honestly. He paused. And tomorrow, maybe my body cooperates a little more. Or maybe it doesn't, but tonight taught me something important, Vera. It taught me that being a husband, being a man, isn't about performance. It's about showing up. It's about being vulnerable. It's about treasuring the person you're with more than you treasure your own pride. Vera felt fresh tears slip down her cheeks. But these were different. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of hope she'd been too afraid to feel until now. I was so scared you'd use me like the others, she whispered. I was so scared that even marriage wouldn't protect me from being discarded. Never, Marcus said fiercely, pulling her closer. Never, Vera. You're my wife. You're my partner. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you. You already are, Vera said, just by being honest, just by being vulnerable. Just by asking me to nurse you, instead of pretending you didn't need anything. Marcus made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I needed you so badly I thought it would kill me. 3 weeks of watching you move through my house, of smelling your bread baking, of seeing you handle the horses like you were born to this life. And I couldn't touch you because I was too afraid of failing. Tonight you gave me permission to need you. That's the best thing I ever wished for, Vera. Not performance. Not perfection. Just permission to be human with someone who wouldn't judge me for it. Vera kissed him then, slow and deep and full of promise. When they broke apart, she whispered, "Stay here. Don't move." She slipped out of bed and padded across the hall to her room, the small room she'd been sleeping in alone for 3 weeks, wondering if she'd ever really belong here. She grabbed her nightgown and a few other things, then returned to find Marcus watching her from the bed. His eyes questioning. "I'm not sleeping across the hall anymore," Vera said simply, setting her things on the chair. "If we're building a real marriage, we're doing it together. In the same room. In the same bed." Marcus's face transformed with joy, so pure it hurt to look at. "You mean it?" "I mean it." Vera climbed back into bed and into his arms. "We're going to figure this out together, Marcus. Your healing, my trust, building something real. All of it." Marcus buried his face in her neck, his arms tightening around her. "I love you," he whispered. "I know it's too soon, and I know I'm damaged, and I know I don't deserve you, but God help me. Vera, I love you." Vera felt her heart crack open completely, felt something warm and terrifying and wonderful flood through her chest. "I think I'm starting to love you too," she whispered back. "The real you, the vulnerable you, the you that's brave enough to ask for help." They fell asleep tangled together, two broken people learning how to fit their jagged edges into something that might, with time and patience and courage, become whole. Outside, the Kansas night stretched vast and full of stars. Inside, in the darkness of their shared room, Marcus and Vera held each other close and dreamed of mornings they'd wake up together, of days they'd build their ranch side by side, of nights they'd continue learning what love looked like when it was honest instead of perfect. The giant mail-order bride had come to Kansas expecting rejection. Instead, she'd found a cowboy brave enough to plead for her strength. And in nursing his wounded pride and shattered confidence, She'd discovered that the best thing he'd ever wished for wasn't a wife who could fix him. It was a wife who could love him exactly as he was, broken pieces and all. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what she'd been wishing for too. If this story touched your heart, if Marcus and Vera's journey resonated with something deep inside you, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another powerful story like this one. We share real tales of love, courage, and transformation that remind us all that being broken doesn't mean being worthless. It just means being human. And we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments below. Are you watching from Texas, London, Sydney, Lagos? Let us know and tell us what part of Marcus and Vera's story moved you most. Your stories matter to us, and we can't wait to hear from you.